on this warm Friday night in Fresno, right? So good evening, welcome to the Armenian Studies Program lecture series. Just ask you to make sure you put your phones on silent before we begin our presentation this evening. I'm going to show you a couple of our upcoming events. We're almost at the end of the semester. For those of you that are not familiar with what's happening on campus, we're already beginning our spring break, Easter break, so Monday through Friday of next week are holidays. That is the whole week there are no classes. And then when we return, we only have 2.5 weeks of classes and a week of finals. So we're headed towards the last kind of stretch of our semester. So coming up for the Armenian Studies program are going to be two presentations. Coming up in just a moment will be the information about the screening of a new film called My Sweet Land, which is going to be screened as part of the Cineculture series. My Sweet Land is a documentary about Karabakh, about Artsakh, as seen through the eyes of a young boy who is kind of the star of the video. We'll see it in just a moment. And basically, this is an award-winning film, and we're going to be seeing it and screening it in the Leon S. Peters Educational Center. So that's our other venue by the rec center. It's at 5:30. Make sure you get the time, and that's free. And then following that will be a discussion with our director, who is Sarin Hayabedian. She's going to be joining us through Zoom. She lives in New York, but she will be discussing the film following that. So really put that on your calendar, tell your friends and family, because I think it's going to be a really good presentation. And then following that, as you saw, the final lecture in our series will be by Dr. David Zakarian, who's going to give us glimpses into the lives of women in the early Armenian Christian period. And it will take place on Friday, May the 9th at 7 o'clock in our other venue, which is the Industrial Technology Building. This year we've been going kind of in different areas, but you just have to kind of keep track of it. Dr. Zakar, Hymen Rosenberg Professor, Professor of Armenian Studies. Again, glimpses into the lives of Armenian women or Armenian women's lives in medieval Armenia. This is his area of expertise. He's given several talks about the lives of Christian women, and that is the role of women in Christianity, and this will be his presentation. So we have a lot of interesting things to finish up with, and again, most people don't realize that this year we put on, the Armenian Studies program has put on over 20 events. So we've been putting on events, lectures, our banquet a few weeks ago, other events. So we're happy that you're here with us. I'm just going to switch over the PowerPoint and then we'll begin. So tonight we're going to have a very special lecture by our guest, Dr. Bedross Der Matossian, who's joining us from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. He is a historian. He was born in the old city of Jerusalem and is a professor of modern Middle East history and the Hymen Rosenberg Professor in Judaic Studies at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And he's the editor and co-editor of 7 books, with his most recent edited volume, Genocides in the 21st Century, which was published by the University of Nebraska Press. And Dr. Der Matossian has a much longer CV. He's very active in the Armenian community, that is in the Armenian scholarly community, as well as the international scholarly community. And he has been also the editor of a new series, Armenian series, that's being published through IV Taurus, which has now come up with 11 or 12? 11 books. So he's also publishing those things. Plus, he's a prolific scholar in terms of his articles, writing about what's happening in the world, the history of Armenians. So we're very happy to have him here tonight to talk about a very interesting perspective, that is denial of genocide as seen through the internet. And he's going to explain how both the Turkish state and also non-state actors utilize digital platforms to spread misinformation about 1915. So I'll let him give that lecture. Afterwards, we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. So I'd like you all to welcome our guest, Dr. Bedross Der Matossian.
Hello, can you hear me, everyone?
Yeah, that's 1 minute.
So thank you, Professor Der Matossian, for giving me this. I consider this my third role. I've been here a lot. Can you hear me? This is something. All right. Can you hear me now? All right, I'll yell. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor to be here. I consider this my kind of third home. I have cousins here, family, good friends, very close friends, Barlo and Laportas and Melina. And so today I'm going to talk about a project that's a larger project called Denial of Genocides in the Digital Age. The world is going to the digital era, and I did to edit a volume which is going to come up next year by University of Nebraska Press. It's called Denial of Genocide in the 21st, that was the first. Denial of Genocide in the Digital Age. That's going to cover the way in which internet and the digital age promotes genocides around the globe. The Cambodian genocide, the Holocaust, the Serbian genocide, the Bosnian genocide, the Armenian genocide, Ukraine genocide, the genocide of the Uyghurs in China and other genocides. So what is the digital age? First I'm going to define the digital age and then going to move on to the presentation. The digital age is also known as the information age. Marks a transformation phase in modern history where there has been a rapid shift from traditional industries, economy driven by information technology. Technological advancements during this period have profoundly impacted how information is processed and transmitted across the globe. The aspect of the digital age has been the explosive growth of the internet, which has drastically accelerated the flow of information, goods and services worldwide. However, breakthrough has proven to be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, the internet has played an important role in educating the general audience, the public, about different positive things. On the other hand, the internet has also played an important role, not important, but a bad role in disseminating hatred, racism, and for our own case, denial of genocides. I always argue as long as there is denial of genocides, genocides continue. Genocide is not the last phase of genocide, as Gregory Stanton says. Gregory Stanton is a scholar of genocide. He has 10 steps to genocide: dehumanization, perpetration, etc. And the last phase is genocide. As long as genocide continues, as long as genocide denial exists, genocide continues. Right? With the understanding of the psychological impact of genocide denial on the victims themselves. So what is denial of genocide? I have defined denial of genocide in the latest book, The Denial of Genocide. It's not only the reluctance to acknowledge historical injustices of the past, but further aims at killing the dead. And this is very important. The dead are dead, but you are further killing the dead and their memory over and over, inflicting pain on the survivors of their descendants and demonstrating that future acts of violence are possible in a climate of deception and impunity. Yesterday actually, there was a major conference at the St. Gregory Pontifical University in Vatican dealing with Christianity in Azerbaijan. And it's a shame that this conference took place at a time in which 2 years ago there was a clear ethnic cleansing of the largest Armenian community of the region. And Azerbaijan is also heavily invested in denying the genocide on the internet. By denying genocide, states and non-state actors become complicit in the process of genocide, transmuting the violence from the physical to the psychological. Those who died in the genocide were killed, but the torture continues, the psychological torture of the descendants, and of the descendants as long as there is no acknowledgement by the perpetrator of the genocidal regime. Denialists become ideological as well as biological descendants of the perpetrators. They continue the process of genocide through print and audiovisual media, the desecration of genocide monuments, and the exertion of pressure on different governments in order to prevent the use of the forbidden word. And the forbidden word is genocide. During the centennial of the Armenian Genocide, I organized a large conference in the Midwest in my university, International Conference on the Armenian Genocide on its centennial. I was an assistant professor back then, and immediately the consul flew from Chicago to meet with the chancellor of the university. And my understanding is that he wanted to put an end to the conference. I'm proud of my university, University of Nebraska Lincoln, because it stood firm on its position and did not put any pressure on me, and the conference was a great success and went forward. This is the way in which denialism is used through different means. Today we're going to concentrate on the internet, but it's not limited to student unions, student associations in American universities, lecturers, professors in different departments, and that's how the consulates and the culture centers in the United States work. Of course, the roots of the Armenian Genocide the denial of the Armenian Genocide goes back to the Armenian Genocide itself. When genocide is taking place, usually perpetrators deny that the genocide is taking place. They create excuses why they are targeting the vulnerable minority group. And so the first denialist publication, as you might know, is this one, the Armenian Revolutionary Aspiration and the Movements Before the Proclamation of Constitution. Talik Sojan here has an excellent article in my first volume on denial where she discusses that denial is the first stage of genocide. Denial is the first stage of genocide. It's not the last stage of genocide. And that's pertinent to all genocides. During the Holocaust itself, when trucks carrying Zachlin B were heading towards the crematories, they called it, these are ambulances to help the Jews, whereas it was fabrication. It's aimed to kill the Jews. And all genocide have their own excuses and their own stories. This book has 300 images because images are important. All right? This is an age of no communication, no internet. But all of we know from historical facts that of weapons collected have been a major source of propaganda within this book, which was translated into English. So now, how do these pictures, how do they make these pictures? They collect 10 guns from weapons from Armenians, and they add whatever they have in their police stations, and they take pictures in order to enhance and promote propaganda, which the basic propaganda is Armenians are preparing a major uprising in the Ottoman Empire, and it's better to preventive action is to relocate them to quote-unquote safer zones. So, other genocides, the Armenian Genocide is the most denied genocide in the course of modern history. It's not only we have few bunch of scholars denying it, there's a mechanism run by the Turkish state. Some argue that, well, the Turkish state started denying the genocide in 1970s during the Armenian militant activities. But as a matter of fact, the Armenian genocide was denied in the late Ottoman period too, by the Atatürk regime too. But Atatürk himself also said that these are the CUP members. But we also know that there's a long continuum between Atatürk, between the Ottoman Empire and Atatürk. The most important example is 1934, the MGM incident. I don't know if you know about the MGM incident. This is Franz Werfel's 40 Days of Musadaq, as you know, and it's a masterpiece of a story based on the Musadaq heroism and resistance during the Armenian Genocide. He wrote a fascinating novel, and it was supposed to be made as a movie by MGM. Back then, 1934, if I'm not mistaken, the Turkish ambassador here in the States, Ertegun, puts pressure on the government in order to cancel this important important event, which is the MGM buying the rights and producing the movie. Mind you that the United States, Armenian Genocide in the United States, the news was a daily event. Every major university, every major newspaper covered it. But after the Republican period, when the Republican period began, there was a total silence because economic considerations overpowered ethical and political considerations, economic considerations. That's very important. So in Michael Bobelian's word is an important writer. The Musadar incident is critical in understanding the evolution of Turkey's campaign of denying the crimes committed by the Young Turks. The standoff with MGM revealed that Turkey would pressure, and today, foreign governments to go along with the policy of denial. A few weeks ago in Australia, there was a bill introduced in the New South Wales Parliament, and it was removed from the agenda after a pressure by the Turkish interest group. So imagine, we're not living in a post-genocidal period where everyone's saying genocide, everything. The pressure continues, and whenever there is pressure, we have to exert counter-pressure. So what are motivations of denials? There are many motivations. There are ideological reasons, we never did it, etc. We're going to discuss some of the claims, some of the fabrications or motivations of what they deny. But I think the most important one is the Armenian Genocide proves to be one of the most important links between the Ottoman Empire and the modern Turkey, thereby demonstrating the continuum between the two. As such, I argue, acknowledging the Armenian Genocide would mean exposing fallacy within the Turkish state's founding mythology. That's an extremely important aspect. We think about the Turkish economy is based on Armenian economy. Appropriation, confiscation of the Armenian lands, Armenian houses, Armenian properties, Armenian factories played an important role in the creation of the Turkish Muslim bourgeoisie Union Republican period. So Israel Charney, who recently passed away, classifies denialists of genocide into 6 major categories. He's the top-notch expert on denial of genocides, specifically wrote a lot about Armenian genocide. He says, the first, there is malevolent bigotry. Those people who intentionally deny the Armenian genocide, and they have bad intentions. Second, there is self-serving opportunism, meaning those who want to become better, quote-unquote, renowned scholar by denying the Armenian genocide. Some of them get good positions in Turkey, and so it's careerism for them. Third, there are innocent denials. Those denialists who are not aware, deny the genocide by not wanting to learn what really happened. Then we have an issue with definitionalism. Those who jump on the concept of genocide. And the stupidest argument is that the concept of genocide did not exist in 1915, so we cannot call it a genocide. Right? Then we have nationalistic hubris, those who are motivated by the nation, ultra-nationalists, the Grey Wolves, and others, whose sole aim is to deny the Armenian genocide because we never done it. It's part of our, we are a pure nation, we are ex-nationalists, we are loyalists, etc. And our nation could never done anything of that sort. And last but not least is human shallowness, those who express vanity, indifference, and they say, who cares if you deny or not deny? It didn't happen, so what? Yeah. So it takes a strong moral stance to confront denialism. So what are the main arguments, first of all, of denialists? First of all, questioning the concept of genocide. Mind you that UN Convention of Genocide itself is a compromise. It's a very problematic terminology because it was drafted by the convention, by the leaders, major leaders of the convention, United States, Soviet Union. So it made it as such they will not be liable to crimes that they have committed in their own countries. In the case of the United States, it was genocide against the indigenous population. In the case of the Soviet Union, Stalin's murders, political genocide of his during the Great Terror. Second, debating evidence. Show me, they would say, show me a paper that sends an order to eliminate the Armenians. And my argument is that perpetrators do not leave evidences. Perpetrators do not leave evidence. You cannot write in your diary and say, today I send an order to kill 2 Armenians or 100,000 Armenians. They don't leave evidences. Third, denying attacks on the victims. It wasn't us. There were others. Fourth, practicing nationalist hubris. We could never do this because we are a noble nation. We are a great nation. Our ancestors. It's part of the nationalistic hubris and nationalistic discussion. And then attributing the death of Armenians to natural factors, where they died during the war, epidemics, heat, etc. And then it wasn't us, they were the Kurds who attacked the things. So, attacked Armenians. So how does the digital age change the discourse of genocide denial in its dissemination? And this is the kind of the digital age. The first manifestation denial of the Armenian genocide actually began in 1989 on an online discussion forum. And that's the first beginning, 1989. And eventually, from 1989, we have this richness of denialist material online. As much as internet is developing, denialism is developing with the internet. Three scholars, Karamzin and Feigenhardt, they wrote an article about the about the novelties of internet-based denial when they discussed the Holocaust. All right, they said first, anyone can become disseminator of denialist literature. Anyone, you can do it. Everyone can do it from your home. Especially that we're protected here, free speech and First Amendment. The speed of dissemination of the denialist literature surpasses unimaginably what has existed in the pre-internet era, because everyone can deny now. It's an open source of denial, because there are restrictions. Third one is the possibility of relocating the websites to different parts of the globe. I mean, yeah, you can now have a website that's triangulating from India, Pakistan, I don't know where, right? But in my research that I've done on the internet, on the denial of the Armenian genocide, I found 9 additional novelties in the digital denial. I'm going to bring examples. I know why I'm talking to the mic, but because I have here my thing. The first is the wide availability of classic denialist texts. Today, you do not need to go to libraries to get the denialist literature. They're available online. Even the first denialist book that was published in 1916, you can download the original from the website. Second, use of graphical and artistic approaches. Readers are glued to the internet sometimes when they see images, they see graphics that they're attracted to. And that's proven psychologically, that you're more prone to view a website where the colors attract you. Second, incorporation of your visual materials. This is very important, because if the denialist classical text, it's not speaking, you're reading, now someone is telling you what's happening. Both audiovisually, both visually, and that's very important. Third, use of shorter sentences. In communication is proven when the sentence is short, your grasp of the material is easier. And I've read even material on that. Fifth, cross-referencing other denialist websites. It's very easy. These denialist websites have a whole section. Just click them, it takes you to different denialist website. And that makes life easier for denialists. Then we have anonymous entities running websites. You don't know who's behind it, and you cannot fight it, you cannot close it. It's there. Followed by extension of social networks like Facebook, X, TikTok, and Instagram, which has become today a rife place for denialists of not only the Armenian genocide, but other genocides. Denialists also use promotions of denial beyond the internet. Billboards, banners, and even skywriting. Do you know what skywriting is? That the plane goes on and writes something in the air. 9, last but not least, is the use of free sharing platforms such as YouTube. All right. So I argue an article which came up recently that there are 3 categories of denialist websites: official, government websites, then non-official websites, organizations, associations, non-profit organizations, then anonymous websites, where you can do whatever you want and you're not responsible. So, the most important website in terms of government of Turkey denying the Armenian genocide is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Turkey. There's a whole section called the controversy between Turkey and Armenia about the events of 1950. Right? So there's no categorization of events, and in a lot of denialist literature, they tend to use passive voice. Armenians were killed, Armenians were massacred, Armenians died. Who, when, what? The key points is in the website is revitalizing suffering. It is revitalizing suffering, actually. Freudian slip. It's relativizing suffering. We died, you died. It was war. Everyone died. Okay. Second, argues against the use of the term genocide. No, second, defends relocation as a safety measure because they were in the war zone and we wanted them to be safe, so we had to relocate them to the Syrian desert because the weather is nicer there and everything is nice there. All right? Relocation, imagine. And then argues against the use of the term genocide because our ancestors would have never perpetrated genocide because we are a proud nation. No one's saying that you're not a proud nation, but you have to accept and acknowledge the crimes that have been perpetrated by your ancestors if you want to move forward. And this is the image of the Foreign Ministry website. As you can see, this is a section called Controversy Between Turkey and Armenia about the events of 1915. And you have to click on this. There's Arabic, German, French, Spanish, Russian, Dutch, Armenian allegation, Armenian genocide facts, figures, Armenian official translation of message of his Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Then they use basic documents, selectively taking documents and then putting it on the website. And one of the interesting things is this one. It's a brochure that's done by Avin. It's an organization in Turkey. I analyzed this document. It's, I think, 9 to 10 pages. It's 1950. Historical background of the disagreement. They put pictures of Hrant Dink in it, etc. It's abusing Hrant Dink, images for the sake of government. And look, there's the sign of Armenian symbol, which is the pomegranate. And there's even a quote from my book. And it's interesting that this quote has been used by ambassadors in different things, where I say the program aspired to autonomy within the framework of the empire. The Hınçak program aspired to complete separation and independence of Turkey and Armenia. So consequently, these groups use different tactics to achieve their goal. For example, in order to quickly bring European attention to the Armenian question, the Hınçak stage mass demoted. But it's basic knowledge. I don't know why you're using it. Kind of, look, we're using an Armenian scholar to prove that the Armenians were revolutionaries, right? Well, they were revolutionaries. No one is denying that. Then we go to non-governmental websites. The two websites that I I'm talking about is the Turkish Coalition of America, TCA, and the Assembly of Turkish Armenian Associations. Both of them pursue the role of what we have here as ANC and Armenian Center, right? But they're rife with denial of Armenian genocide. It's not only denial, but they have funded, the Turkish Coalition of America have funded denialist literature that came out from the University Press publication series on the Ottoman Empire. This is the Turkish Coalition of America. It's a non-profit organization, and there is a specific section here on Armenian issue. So again, a genocide becomes an issue, a genocide can become an event, a genocide can become anything. Then we have the Assembly of Turkish American Association, which has presence in 50 states, including California itself. And here's a section, Resource Center, an Armenian and Muslim tragedy, yes. Genocide, no. And there's extensive here information provides denialist literature to anyone who doesn't know about Armenian genocide. There are many people in this country, they don't know about Armenian genocide actually. We keep thinking that, well, Biden accepted Armenian genocide, recognized Armenian genocide, and we think that's the end. No, that's not the end. Education is the means to an end. Many schools now adopt courses that they teach Holocaust, for example. And why do they don't teach Armenian genocide, or the Bosnian genocide, or the Rwandan genocide, or the Cambodian genocide? What is anonymous websites? According to Johnny Angel Butera, anonymity can provide protection of the identity of the author for the social ostracism and legal ramifications of their denied beliefs, but also may allow the author to create a new identity that allows them to speak freely on the subject of denial with support and positive feedback from other community members, all right? And the most important anonymous website, the most sophisticated anonymous website is the Fact Check Armenia. Fact check websites, you know there are fact check websites. What's the duty of fact check websites? What do they do? Check facts. They check facts. For example, major newspapers have fact check groups. Whenever a president or whenever a politician or whenever anyone says something, they have to fact that in order to see. But here it's a reverse way of fact checking of the Armenian genocide. It was launched during the centennial. As you remember, Turkey was in a quote-unquote difficult situation because it was a centennial, so they had to launch many activities in order to counter the Armenian quote-unquote allegations of genocide. All right? It's available, the website is available in 7 languages. It has high quality infographics, images and video clips, and has strong social media presence. This is the website. See how sophisticated it is. It's called Fact Checking. Take action now. Click here, all right? It is divided into photos, videos, and other section. It has this section actually, 5 questions. Important questions and answers. Because that's how fact-checking websites work. They say something and then put a stamp saying this is false. The events of 1915 constitutes a clear-cut genocide against the Armenian people. You might think that, wow, they're saying it. But false. Stamp is there. Decision has been made. There is no legal consequence to support the Armenian attempt to portray these actions as willful, deliberate attempt to commit genocide. Then the second one, the events of 1915 were a systematic attempt to eliminate entire race. False. The events were triggered in response to years of violence perpetrated by Armenian separatists. Where's the Hymen massacre? Where's the Adana massacre? So, other strategies that they use is video clips, which are divided into 3 sections: documentaries, short interviews, documentaries, and short clips using animation. Use of fact-checking format to spread. You use fact-checking format to spread denial, and the recontextualization of historical facts. And this is the video section, as you can see. Historical evidence explains, Armenian dream, the tragedy of 19, Armenian revolts in Anatolia, chronology. These are short clips. I'm going to play one of the clips. I'm glad it's a risky website. Okay. Oh, the sound horrible. Just a second. Sign. Oh, maybe it's here. Oh, it's. Oh no, it's from there actually.
Should be on. It's not missing. Everything's okay. It's coming up. It's going to be there.
Okay. But basically, I'm going to show you how the amount of money that they've spent in creating this fantastic digital presentation of the so-called Armenian Genocide. You can read actually. It's external powers that. Oh, it's not showing there for some reason. Okay, I thought that you were seeing it. Anyways, let me go back to the presentation. Sorry about that. So they have other promotion tactics, which is Google Ads. Sometimes they used to use to Google Armenian Genocide. The first result would come out denied of the Armenian Genocide, denied as literature. Second, newspaper advertisements, because I don't know if newspapers have ethical standards, but if you pay them 60, 70,000 per ad, they're going to publish what you want them to publish. Skywriting and billboards in various US cities. This is 2016, April, denying the Armenian Genocide in Boston. It says change for progress, because Armenians are not a progressive nation. You can't change into progress by stopping the allegations of Armenian Genocide. Stop allegations. And what is this here? Yeah, but what does it reply? So what's the idea behind it? Anyone? Is it what? Coming together, and you can fly. You can be. This is Wall Street Journal, 2016. Truth equals peace. Truth equals peace. During this weekend of reflection, we remember and mourn the loss of Turkish human lives. This is relativization, because everyone died. No one is saying that Turkish counterparts didn't die during World War I. Lost in destructive conflict, which is known as the Armenian tragedy, right? If Armenians use tragedy now, Turkish government will be happy, right? Because tragedy, accident is tragedy, tsunami is tragedy, an earthquake is a tragedy. And what do you see here? Anyone?
Two flags. The third one isn't correct, because that's not in the right order. Red, white, and blue.
Which one should this be?
It should be the US, right?
No.
No.
It's the Russian one.
French?
Yeah, Russian flag.
Oh, Russian.
So what does it tell you? It doesn't reflect today actually the situation. What does it tell you? This is V, victory.
Yeah.
Alright? This is not victory. And because Russia is Armenians are siding with Russia, that's our, right? So that's the political message. Then we have Boston Globe, 2015, change for progress. Believe the first Prime Minister of Armenia, Kachasuni, they use Kachasuni a lot all the time, who said, what? We ought to have used peaceful language with the Turks, but we did not, right? Collectively taking stuff and then putting it there. This is writing in New York City, 2016. Turkey equals truth. And what measures are you going? Even Armenians haven't used these measures in promoting the recognition of Armenian genocides. And then you have, and then we have scholars. It's Justine and Barlow told me that's wrong. And all right, can you see it? And then we have Justin McCarthy. I just found this a few weeks ago, actually. I'm not just checking. Then I found his Facebook website. All right, John McCarthy had wrote some interesting stuff about the ethnic cleansing in the Balkans during the late 19th century. But he's one of the architects of the Armenian genocide denial. Right? And this is his website. The website is aimed to promote his scholarship, pure scholarship. But it's a propaganda website where his Facebook wall says the assassination campaign in the US by 1980 had begun to receive considerable clandestine support from Armenian community in the United States and Europe. All the Armenians were on the same page with Asanda and other organizations. Since we're talking about Armenian denial of Armenian genocide on the internet and beyond, I'm going to discuss more about movies and most important movie is The Promise. It cost $100 million, and I'm not going to express my views about the movies. It's an interesting movie, but that's not the interesting part for me. The interesting part of me is that what happened when the movie, after the movie was screened in Toronto Film Festival, if I'm not mistaken. Toronto, that's been in Canada. So you know the story of The Promise. I'm not going to get into detail. But what's interesting is the IMDb, before the movie was released in the United States, there were thousands, more than 50,000 ratings on the movie that gave it 1 out of 10. Without watching the movie, if this is an organized campaign to discredit the movie, then what are you talking to? What are we talking about? In Stefan Nierig's words, he's a Holocaust genocide scholar, he says, "We are witnessing yet another anti-Armenian denialist campaign playing out abroad, far away from turning open democratic societies. While it is not clear who is orchestrating the campaign, it has to be assumed that, as with other campaigns connecting, go back to the Turkish government and or nationalist rule. Few movies have ever experienced such a pre-release buzz on IMDb. That much is clear. Thank you, denialists." All right? It may be sarcastic. You tell me which movie received 50 or 60,000 rating before it was released in the United States. Of course, the answer to The Promise is The Ultimate Lieutenant. That was funded partially by, I think, either the Minister of Culture or Tourism too. But again, major movie that they brought really excellent scholars and excellent actors. Ben, what's his name? Kingsley. Ben Kingsley. Yeah, Ben Kingsley and others, to portray World War I, of course, and portray Armenians in a negative manner, because Armenians during World War I were doing one thing only. They were uprising against the Ottoman state, weapons in their hands. This is another interesting movie called 120. It's a very touching movie if you watch it and you don't know anything about Armenian genocide. It's about 120 young people during World War I who are assigned to take weapons and bring it to the fighting Ottoman troops during the Sarıkamış battle on the Eastern Front from Van. And these kids, under the huge burden, weight, horrible conditions of winter under the snow, they go to their weapons to the Ottoman troops, but they encounter the Armenian evil Armenian revolutionaries who killed them some more, etc. So again, the only place that you see Armenians in the movie is portrayed as revolutionaries, as bad people who are killing our children. Right? And this is partially also funded by one of the Turkish ministers. Then we come to Sarıgalim. Sarı Gelin is, of course, you know the song Sarı Gelin? Yeah? And it is authentically it's Armenian, but they made Sarı Gelin, you know, the yellow bride, etc. But it's this document costs about $1 million to produce in Turkey, and you can find bits of, and you can find it online now on YouTube, the whole documentary denying the Armenian genocide. So another scandal happened, was the Times scandal. I don't know if you remember, the European Time magazine in 2005 was paid huge sums of money. Tourism in Turkey, in Europe, tourism of Turkey in Europe, and they had put a CD, which DVD actually, which most of it dealt with tourism, but there was one chapter which was the Sarı Gelin documentary translated into English. 600,000 people received this DVD. There was a major op of Armenian organizations in Europe, and then the Times issued apology. It says, Time regrets distributing. Can't you check even fact check what's written on it? Times regrets distributing the DVD, and we are very sorry for the offenses it has caused. The so-called documentary portion of the DVD presents a one-sided view of history that does not meet our standards of fairness and accuracy, and we would not have distributed it had we been aware of its content. Such a prestigious Time magazine. Can't you go and check the DVD, what does it have in it? Unfortunately, the DVD was not adequately reviewed by anyone at all because it was believed to be a benign promotion piece. We have since changed our review process so as to guarantee more vigilance in review. We apologize to the Armenian community and to our readers. Apologize, but the damage has been done. 600,000 people had received that DVD and watched the film. So what do we see the common themes within the denial? First, Armenian revolts as justification for the Ottoman troops to take care of Armenians. Second, the comparative suffering argument. You suffered, we suffered, let's hug each other, let's start from you over. Absence of the term genocide, never use genocide because that causes the blood pressure of Turkish nationalists to go high. Call for impartial court decision. We have still to go to a specific court, an unbiased court, to prove that what happened in 1915 was a genocide. Right? Demand to cease using the genocide term. Don't use it. It's bad because it does not reflect what happened in 1915. Framing as a joint pain. Your pain is our pain, and our pain is your pain. And you can describe it in very, and provide an answer what Armenians in historic Armenia or Eastern Anatolia today. And both sidism is an important tool for denialists. BBC uses both sidism. It says Armenians say, Turks say. It becomes, Armenian genocide becomes an Armenian narrative solely. That we have made up this story and we believe in it. And there are multiple fabrications that they use in order to tell us what's happening. So I'm going over this to this, and then I'm going to conclude afterwards. On January 7th, Mark Zuckerberg revealed changes to Meta content moderation policies in a video, Facebook, and a post on Threads. He said that Meta has spent years developing trust and safety systems and content moderation policies. He acknowledged that the company has made too many mistakes and engaged too much censorship. He announced a shift in Meta's approach aiming to prioritize free expression over strict content moderation, which means the gates of anyone who wants to deny and say anything. He said, first we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote non-stop about how misinformation led to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without coming to arbiters of truth. But the fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more than trust and they've created, especially in the US. So next couple of months, we're going through a phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. The only genocide that Facebook took a decision of not tolerating is the Holocaust. They issued a few years ago, or last year, I can't recall, that they're not going to tolerate the Holocaust denial on Facebook. So what can we do as academics, as students, as community members? Of course, I'm against shaming and cursing and character assassination of any denialists. All right? I think the way in doing it is through education. Expose and counter arguments academically. Raise awareness about the genocide and denialist tactics. Emphasize the dangers of denial of future crimes. The denial of the Cambodian genocide 1975 to 1979 led to a second genocide in the 1990s. As long as perpetrator regimes deny genocides, it emboldens them to perpetrate acts of genocide. Today, all of you know the Turkish complicity in the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh. Strategic information, weapon, government officials, army officials, systematically represent denialist motives, make primary and secondary sources widely available online, utilize digital tools to combat denialism, use the same tools in order to combat denialism. Now, I said earlier that the Armenian that Holocaust is taught in most, everyone knows about Anne Frank, for example. But outside California, to what extent the Armenian genocide or other genocides are being taught at schools, that question. In my own state, Nebraska, I remember a few years ago, one of the legislatures wanted to pass a bill. The bill said, for education purposes, in the Holocaust, the Armenian genocide, and the Cambodian genocide, and other listed the genocide of the 20th century, to pass a bill in order to educate in the public schools. But then I was invited to give an expert testimony in the legislature. The senator who passed the bill wanted to pass the bill. Her office contacted me and they said, I said, when is the event going to take place? They said, we'll let you know. The event had taken place on Monday, and I found about it on Tuesday. On Monday, all the Turkish students of the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, faculty, community members, packed in the legislature, opposing the bill, and the bill didn't pass. They shoved it. And this is not only the case of Nebraska. There are other states where, saying only that Biden recognized the Armenian genocide, that's not the end itself. Who cares? One of my students, I had Julien Zarifian gave a talk about the recognition of the Armenian genocide. One of my students asked him a question. She said, what's the use of the genocide by Biden when during his term an ethnic cleansing of Armenians was taking place? Who needs that recognition? Armenians say, well, it's good for us, everything. But if administrations are not in place and to take any actions to put pressure on Azerbaijan, where everyone saw what's happening, no one said anything, yet alone another interesting point of Armenians being alone during the most difficult times. We need to emphasize that denial of genocide encourages repetition of crimes. Conclusion, combating genocide denial requires a multifaceted approach, I argue, using the same digital tools employed by denialists to educate and enlighten